What's going on, fam? Welcome back to the channel. This is the 1 month review of the beautiful Adler Horenso. These boots are a niche Japanese brand and they are absolutely fantastic, and I want to tell you guys why. We're going to go over all of the aspects of this boot that make it really good, some of the aspects that make it maybe not so good. We're going to compare it to the competitors, and at the end I'll give it an overall rating after about 2 months now of wearing these in training sessions and in individual sessions as well. So let's start straight away with the sole plate. Now, the sole plate of this boot is probably, in my opinion, its weak point. The only reason being is because it's very, very flexible. Some of you will really enjoy that aspect of it. So in some sense, this is more of a subjective rating of the sole plate. I think the stud pattern is perfectly adequate for both artificial and firm ground pitches. I had no issues with sticking into the ground. I just tend to prefer something that has a little bit more structure, especially in that midfoot area where my foot flexes a lot. That being said, given that there is a little bit of flexibility, it does give your foot a very natural feeling underground. So for me, it's kind of a double-edged sword. You get the benefits of being a little more barefoot, a little more agile, that kind of stuff. But on the other hand, after a long period of wear, so 90 minutes, 120 minutes when you're in a training session or in a game, your feet start to tire out a little bit because they're doing the majority of the work, as opposed to a shoe that has a more structured sole plate. Even something in this same class that I would say is a direct competitor, the Morelia 2 made in Japan has a stiffer sole plate than this, and that one's very classic sort of looking as well. So for me, this sole plate is going to get a 6.5 out of 10. Moving on to the heel area of this football boot, for me, this is fantastic. It's no nonsense. There is quite a bit of predetermined shape because of the way that this internal heel counter is structured. It goes all the way up to about 1/4 of an inch below where the top of the boot is, or the top of the heel is, and so it does have quite a bit of structure to it. So for some people, if you don't fit in this particular shape, it might not be as good, but for me, I slip right in here and the heel has zero slippage. This nice microfiber lining does a nice job of kind of holding your foot in place regardless of whether you have regular grip socks on or non-grip socks on. And so for me, this heel area is really comfortable, and I got no blisters from it as well, which is really all you can ask for, especially from a pair of football boots that has more of a classic design. Oftentimes, those are boots that give me a little bit of heel slippage because they are built to suit most foot types, and so sometimes it does get in the way a little bit of that comfort. But for this particular pair of football boots, the Horenso, no issues with the heel area. So for me, this is going to get an 8 out of 10. The upper of this football boot is really, really sensational. It is one of those uppers you have to just test in hand for you to actually understand what this is like. The leather is so soft. It's a completely kangaroo leather football boot, so you're going to have no issues breaking it in regardless of what foot shape you have. I have quite wide feet in this area here, and they broke in just fine. With the stitching pattern that they've gone with, it does actually give you quite a bit of wrap around your foot, which is nice. So even though the leather softens up, it breaks in, it molds and shapes and kind of stretches just a tiny bit. The stitching pattern does a good job of holding the structure of the shape really well, and we'll talk about shape and fit in a minute. But this upper is really, really fantastic. It's one of the best. That single layer of really premium kangaroo leather, plus a layer underneath of this really thin white mesh material, which helps the boot breathe a little bit. It does really feel like this is one of the best sort of barefoot feeling football boots on the market. So if you're on the market for something that, with the underfoot feeling, with the way that the leather just feels super natural on feet, I would highly recommend this football boot. This upper gets an 8.5 out of 10 for me. The lockdown of this football boot is pretty good considering that it's a fully kangaroo leather upper. It's a lightweight feel, and there isn't really any structure elements other than just the stitching. That being said, I will say that the stitching pattern on this football boot is very, very good. The Horenso does a really nice job of locking your foot in, and I was talking to a subscriber or somebody who follows me on Instagram recently, and they were talking about whether or not I got midfoot slippage. And what we were speaking about is midfoot slippage often happens when you dig your foot into the ground. Is there any, what we call in, or at least in my part of the country, in English, we say rollover. So if there's any rollover as your foot kind of rolls over the side of the sole plate, that happens when you don't have that good of lockdown and there's slippage kind of in the midfoot as your foot slides back and forth this way on the sole plate. That often happens when it's hot outside like this, your feet are sweaty, blah, blah, blah. But this boot actually does a really fantastic job of holding you onto the sole plate. I wouldn't say it's the best. I don't actually think it's better than the Morelia 2 made in Japan, which is I think this boot's main competitor. And so for me, this is gonna get a pretty average rating, but a good rating of 7.5 out of 10. Break-in time on this football boot is practically non-existent. This is one of those boots that you can slip in right away and have a session. You can shoot with them, you can do an agility session, really anything, and my foot shape or anything thinner than my foot, which is fairly wide, I would say, is gonna be totally suitable for this as far as break-in time. I don't think you're gonna have any options. I don't think you're gonna have any issues with the break-in time of this football boot, particularly because it is a kangaroo leather upper. There's a good amount of flex to the upper, and it just feels really nice. It's a very nice starting shape. It's very neutral, similar to the Morelia 2 made in Japan. And so for me, the break-in time is a 9 out of 10. Durability and build quality is also something that I think needs to be spoken about more on football boots of this era. A lot of, I guess now, calfskin leather, they're moving away, or fake leather even. They're moving into more of a synthetic fit and feel versus more of the traditional leather. And I will say the durability and the build quality of these has been absolutely fantastic. I don't know on Adler's website, if I didn't find anything about whether they say that this is an FG or an AG pair of football boots, like what it's meant for, but I would assume that this is probably meant to be played with on natural grass, as most sort of FG pairs are. For me, this held up so well. There is absolutely no leather discoloration barely here on the toe area right there, but that is really it. It really has been a fantastic pair of football boots to wear, and they have held up on artificial grass. I've only worn these on actual firm ground, so natural grass, I think twice in the last month and a half or so when I did some individual training, and they were absolutely fantastic. But as I say before, AG pitches often will absolutely shred leather football boots, and these have held up really, really well. So I don't anticipate any issues with these. And for me, this, again, made in Japan quality is really, really difficult to beat, especially from a leather football boot standpoint. So for me, these are a 9 out of 10. Shape and fit of this football boot is also very good. As I spoke about in the upper and in the break-in time sections, the shape that you get sort of out of the box, if you will, is very neutral. It's gonna fit most foot types. There's enough flex to this upper that it is gonna break in. It can get pretty wide. As I do recommend with shape and fit, I would go an entire size down. You could absolutely get away with a half size down if you want a tiny bit of extra space on the end of your toes. If that's what you want, I would say from US based sizing, go a half a size down. But if you're like me and you want your boots to fit exactly the size of your foot, wow, I'm losing my words here. If you want it to fit exactly the shape of your foot, I would go with a full size down. So these are an 8 US. I usually wear a 9 US, and the fit and the length is perfect for me. So I would say fit and sizing perspective, once you get the right size, that's when these boots shine. They really are one of the most barefoot leather football boots I've ever tried on my feet. I think there are very few football boots on the market that give this type of sensation with how thin and how well this football boot fits. I'm gonna knock it down half a point only because there's a little bit of bowing right here. I wish they had added the runner's knot ability. So it's honestly something that I just might do. I might just punch a hole in the side of these to get that runner's knot. But there's a little bit of bowing right here. So I am gonna knock it down half a point, but still 8.5 out of 10 for shape and fit. These are sensational. As far as competition goes, there's a couple different ones that I wanna go over. So the main competitor, which I've now mentioned a couple times in this video, is the made in Japan Morelia 2. That's probably its main competitor. The other ones that I would say are the Copa Mundial, which is sort of the Adidas classic leather football boot that's been around forever. And then you have brands like Pantofolo d'Oro, excuse the pronunciation, and some of the newer brands that are popping up in the US and across other markets like Uno Zero and companies like that that are just classic kangaroo and calfskin leather football boots that sort of follow that traditional shape, if you will. And for me, these are second on that list to very, very close second on that list to the Morelia 2 made in Japan. For me, the Morelia 2 just gives me a little bit more of what I'm looking for from a leather boot perspective, but we are talking tiny, tiny margins. I would say if you are somebody who wants a boot that literally no one else is going to have, especially if you live in the US, this is the boot to go for. I know some people wear the Mizuno products. Some people also wear Asics products, those Asics leather boots, which for me are so sensational as well. But if you want a classic pair of football boots that no one else is going to buy, I think this is your top as far as the competition goes. But for me, what I'm looking for in a boot of this shape and this style, I just prefer the Made in Japan Morelia 2 just a tiny bit more, even though these are absolutely sensational and I've really enjoyed playing in these, and they will continue to stay a part of the rotation moving forward. So that's where they stack up against the competition. Performance of this football boot is very good. As I mentioned, with lockdown and the upper and the way that it fits and feels, it does do a really good job. It's actually well above average as far as performance goes, particularly when you're talking boots that have such a simple construction to them and a simple shape. It's a boot that I've really enjoyed playing in, and as I mentioned before, playing on artificial ground can be really brutal, but I do think having a kangaroo leather upper with that kind of breathable mesh stitched on the inside does give you a really nice natural barefoot feel. So when I'm dribbling, when I'm shooting, when I'm crossing the ball, doing any sort of ball contact, this does do a fantastic job. Lockdown's really decent as well. No heel slippage, and they also give you insoles as well. So they give you the custom set of real line insoles, which are pretty cool. And so if you're somebody who has a really high arch and you want some, or flat feet, I guess, and you want a little bit of that arch support, those custom insoles will be great for you. So for me, performance gets an 8 out of 10. Overall, for the Adler Horenso, these boots really are something special. If you're somebody who wants something mega unique, I am really a fan of these. I'm a huge fan of these. I appreciate Andrew Lockhart, who put me onto these. You guys can go check out his boot blog as well. These are a pair of football boots that I've enjoyed. You guys know I've also done the review and the 1 month on the Adler Horenso. I think I didn't order the right size in those. I could have probably gone another half size down, like a full size, just like these. I will hopefully be reviewing some of the other Adler products as well. There's 2 other lines that I'm gonna totally forget the names of. But for me, the Horenso is a fantastic option from the Adler lineup. It's super lightweight. It's got a lot of really good qualities to it, including the upper, including the lockdown, especially for a boot of this shape and style. And for me, this is a top contender when it comes to classic leather football boots on the market. It is absolutely one you should try if you are interested in a pair. So for me, the overall rating of the Adler Horenso gets an 8 out of 10. Very good. For a classic leather football boot silo. Very excited about these. These will continue to stay in the rotation. I'm going to continue to wear these. I'll probably get a shooting session in right now with them as well. They are a joy to wear, and they're really fun to just knock a ball around as well because they are so classic. They are so easy to wear any time of the day. So if you guys enjoyed that video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I will leave a link down below to where I bought these, which is just the Adler website. I do believe they ship internationally. Well, I know they ship to the US, and I believe they ship other places internationally. So if you are interested in the Adler Horenso, or you're interested in the Adler Horenso or one of the other 2 silos that they have, you can check the link down below. I'll also leave a link down below for Andrew's page. He has an awesome boot blog and he does stuff. He lives in Japan and is a friend and also somebody who recommends some really dope ass boots. So thank you again to Andrew for this recommendation. I have thoroughly enjoyed them. If you guys are interested in in-season lifting programs, very important for injury prevention and strength gains and maintenance during sessions and during season, you guys can go to my website, www.noahcavanaugh.com/shop, and pick up phases 1 through 4 for a bundle discount price, or you can buy one of each or one at a time if you want. They are fantastic. They're what I use on a normal day-to-day basis here at the facility every morning, and I would highly recommend them. Thank you guys all for watching. I appreciate it. Hit that like button if you got value from this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. As always, be awesome. Take care. I'll see y'all in the next video.